Thank you so much. All right, okay. I see the recording button, so I think we're good to go. So good morning. My name is Lynn Leach, and I'm here to demonstrate how to make a holiday wreath for your front door. And as mentioned, you don't need to be a professional. You don't need to be an expert. We can create something absolutely beautiful, even if it's your first time. So I want to talk a little bit about supplies that you need, and there really aren't very many. Hopefully all of you can access the simple few things that you need to do this. So the first thing that you need is a wreath frame, a base to put all of your greens on. I like to use a grapevine wreath frame, which you can buy at Michael's or even at the dollar store occasionally. Now you see them. I actually make my own. There's so much grapevine out and about, and my dad is always thrilled if I go out there once a year and pull the grapevine down out of his trees. So yeah, so mine are homemade, which allows me to kind of control what size I make. So I can make some big ones, or this would be about a 10 to 12 inch frame, which is about perfect for most people's front door. If you can't find a grapevine wreath or don't have the skills to make a grapevine wreath, you can even just use like a basic wire frame. Maybe you've saved it from wreaths you've purchased in the past, or again, you can find them at Michael's or the dollar store too. So I want to get to the fun part of the supplies, and that's our greens. And it's been such a beautiful, beautiful wet season. And so the Ontario greens are plentiful and very, very fresh. I almost wish we had smell-o-vision here this morning, because my dining room just smells like Christmas, really, with all of the fresh greens and the fragrance that they bring. So I'm going to start with one of my favorite greens. And this is a green that you usually can't purchase, but that hopefully everyone has access to around their home. And it's from the shrub yew. And the reason I like it is it's very, very dark green. It has a very rich look about it. And you can see how bushy it is. So it makes a big, beautiful, full wreath. It doesn't have too much fragrance, but what it lacks in fragrance, it makes up for in beauty. It also is very, very good to hold its needles. So that's kind of key, I think, when you're looking at the greens to go on your front door. Generally, the door is closing, opening, closing, opening. And so it's important to get those greens that hold their needles really well. I try to avoid spruce. Spruce is one of those ones that every time you shut the door, tinkle, 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 you hear them falling. But yew is a really great one to use. So for fragrance, I always add a little bit of cedar. And again, this is one that most people have access to. The Ontario cedar this year is beautiful. Cedar trees are water lovers, and it's been a great season. Nothing matches that fragrance, that aroma of having a little bit of cedar tucked into your wreath somewhere. The other green that I've got this morning, and this is again just from my property. If you go for a walk, you'll occasionally find them, and it's hemlock. And the reason I love hemlock, well, I love it for a few reasons. It's a pretty dark green, very delicate texture. What I found today is that lots of our greens have bountiful cones, and the hemlock certainly does this morning. These tiny little sweet little cones on there, which saves you some work at the end of adding your own cones if you're, not good at that sort of thing. If you can find some greens with the cones already attached by Mother Nature, we'll let her do the work. The other thing that I love about hemlock is how silvery it is on the backside. So when you're looking at your greens and cutting them, be sure to appreciate both sides of it. It doesn't matter if you use them upside down, if you think the backside, which in the case of hemlock, is prettier. So, again, you take those materials that you see. Cedar's the same. It's got a different color on the backside. And so, that's a way to sort of customize your wreath. The last main green I've got here is fir. And I love fir, again, incredible fragrance, ability to hold its needles really, really well, and it's very soft to use. Most of the greens I choose, I try to get something soft because you are working closely with them and it can be hard on your hands. Fir feels soft, is very, very pretty. You may have a fir growing in your yard. If not, you can buy bundles and then slice and dice them all up into little pieces. The other thing that I like to do is we always have a fir Christmas tree. I think it's the #1 selling Christmas tree in Ontario right now is that balsam fir. And, you know, you take those bottom limbs off, cut and slice and dice those ones, and you can use those little leftover pieces for your wreath. So that's the 4 main greens. I've got a few more greens, which I'll talk about, which I sort of add in at the end, which are sort of more specialty greens. So basically, the only other thing that you're going to need is paddle wire. So again, this is a Michael's item, just $3 or $4 to get a big paddle of wire. And throughout this process, you're never going to cut it. Okay, I'm not going to show you the cut and tie method of making a wreath. My process is a little bit easier, and you're just going to use one big long length of wire. So you're going to collect your greens into little bunches, and you can use 1 green, you can use 2 or 3 greens. I like to sort of mix and match because I think it gives a really pretty, diverse texture and color by adding a few different greens in each bundle. The pieces of greens I've cut between 4 and 6 inches. But again, I haven't measured, so, you know, use your own judgment. Bigger, longer pieces will give you a fuller, bigger wreath. If you're putting your wreath, say, between the outside door and the storm door, you may want to go with smaller pieces that give you sort of a tidier, thinner wreath to kind of squeeze in there. So basically, I layer them up. I love that balsam fir in there because, again, great fragrance. Just as you're working with it, you can smell that fragrance. And this hemlock with the beautiful cones and silver, I'm actually going to put on the top. And all you're going to do, and I'm going to hold it up so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. You would lay it on your table so that it's a little bit easier. And you're just going to put it on the front of your wreath. And you're going to take your paddle wire at about the halfway point of the group of greens. And you're going to go around 2 or 3 times. And I sort of work my way down towards the stems. Okay, so each bundle is going to be laid the same direction. And you're always going to work in the direction of your stems. Okay, so, and for the first bundle, I'm actually just going to give that wire just a bit of a twist, just to make sure that it's fashioned on there. Okay, and then you're just going to leave that hanging there. And it's a little awkward, but you'll get the hang of it as you go. So the next thing you're going to do is make another bundle. It's basically 2 steps, and you're going to repeat them over and over again. Okay, so you've got your other bundle here. And you are going to lay it on top of your other, you're basically going to cover up your stems with your new bundle in the same direction, okay? So you've got the stems facing the same way, and you're just gonna basically come down a little bit and hide your stems, okay? And again, the closer you put your bundles, the fuller your wreath. The further you put your bundles, the narrower your wreath. And so as you go along, you can kind of judge and sort of gauge, you know, how it's looking. It doesn't have to be perfection because we're going to add in a few greens at the end to kind of fix any spots that maybe don't look really symmetrical. Maybe you're super artistic and you don't want it symmetrical. So, you know, I always think the beauty of a handmade item is being able to tell it's handmade. And so those imperfections are beauty. Don't, you know, don't get too hung up worrying about that. So again, I've just kind of worked in the direction of the stems, done 2 or 3 rounds with my wire, and again, leave it hanging. And then you're just going to repeat that process basically again and again. And I'm just going to try to work quickly here so that Watch my time here, make sure we've got lots of time to go over the next step. I don't always put the greens in the same order. If I find a particularly pretty piece of something, then I'll kind of put that on top. Again, I'm trying to keep that hemlock front and center because it's already got those nice little sweet cones on it. As far as how tight you're going to pull your wire, you want it tight enough that your greens are on there sturdy, not so tight that your wreath ends up kind of crunched and kind of shrunken looking. You still want there to be some movement and some life in the greens that you've got on there. So I'm hoping what this does is encourages you to step outside today and take a look in your own garden to see what's available. You'll be surprised. I think a lot of people forget that November is a great season for the garden. And if you get out there, you know, you'll be amazed at what you've got for supplies. The other thing that I find a wreath is really great for, I generally start with my big holiday planters. So putting greens into urns where the flowers or maybe your mums were. And I find that at the end of that, I've always got a few little straggly little leftovers that aren't large enough to fill the urns. And again, that's what I use for my wreath making. It's all my little bits and bobs that I had left over that maybe are too short to use in the urn, but end up being perfect for the wreath. So you can see how quickly it's working up. We're at the halfway point. This is a spot where I just want to point out, again, this is your project. You can make it as unique as you like. I've seen all sorts of people leave their wreath at the halfway point, put a beautiful bow on it so that some of the grapevine's exposed. So, you know, if you're shy on materials, you can always add just a little bit of green, or maybe you just prefer that look. It's a very, very pretty kind of artistic way to do your wreath. The beauty of these homemade projects is really the sky is the limit. You know, if you're on the computer and you take a look at Pinterest and you see, you know, if you Google holiday wreaths, it's amazing the ideas and inspiration that you'll get. Just taking a look and seeing what some of these artistic people do. Again, it just smells wonderful. This is something that I like to do with a group of people, not generally online like this. You know, invite a few friends over around the kitchen table, work on wreaths, have some Christmas music, some hot apple cider. So it's a great fun thing to do, and also include them in the walk, to go out and gather some materials, and hopefully by next year we'll be back doing that. It's nice when your materials are all pre-cut like this, and that's generally what I do, is I make little piles and I just have it all pre-cut. And then you can see just in about 10 minutes, you can actually work this up very, very quickly. I also find I make lots of extras, and these end up being holiday gifts too. I try to always make one for my mom or people who are special to me. There's still nothing better, I think, than the homemade gift, and everyone wants a wreath for their front door, so I find it's a really nice gift to give. Okay, so probably just 2 more bundles here. I do want to show you the final bundle, because that's probably the trickiest one that you're going to put on your whole wreath. So this is the next to last. And again, we're just about there. Even though it looks complete, there's still space for 1 more bundle here to kind of bridge that little gap. If you end up with a little gap where you do kind of finish, you can always put your bow there. So there's lots of ways to hide little gaps. Like I say, at this point, I don't even worry if it's not super symmetrical or there's gaps or it's not, you know, it's not perfect. This one's actually turning out not too bad, but they don't always come out right. Okay, so your last bundle, basically, you're going to make your bundle of greens just as you have been. Bundle here. Okay, and so you're going to take that bundle and you're going to lift the first bundle you put on. You're going to lift it just like this, and you're going to slide those stems in under so that your stems are hidden. You don't even know that where you began and where you finished. And again, if you end up, it always looks a little bit awkward where you've been there. And I try not to wire the tops of that front bundle, simply because as soon as you put the wire around it, it kind of pinches it in. Okay. So we're all the way to the end. If you're lucky, oh, and I am today, you will find the wire where you started. If you've lost it, if it ends up getting wired into your wreath, don't fret, because you can just tie off your wire. But it's always better, I find, if you can find the very, very first wire that you left. And then you can just basically twist those together to sort of finish it off. Okay. So what you end up with is, it's not perfect, but not bad. Especially, I'll be honest, this is my first one of the season. So you guys are getting me practiced up for the next couple of weeks where I go into, factory mode of making piles of wreaths. But at this point, this is where you really get to customize it and make it something special for whoever you're giving it to or for yourself on the front door. And so again, I'm going to go back to the materials table and talk about some of the goodies that you can add in to really make it something unique and something that really speaks to your own taste. So one of the last greens that I always use, but I add in last because the wire makes it less pretty, and that is white pine. And you can see how pretty and delicate it is. This is one for sure. If you go for a walk in the woods, you will find it, and it doesn't hurt it, to take a few little bits of it. It's such a soft little thing. And so basically at this point, you can take these little bits and bobs that you've got. You've got your wire in there, and you're going to go in the same direction. And all you're going to do is push it in. And you can see how it's in there. It's nice and sturdy. And then you have that beautiful fall, that natural look of that white pine. And so we're going to put some of those in. And again, white pine is one of the ones that I love to use in my urns. Great big pieces like this. And what I do is I trim off these little guys. That goes into my urn. That's all into the soil. You would have lost that anyway. And then I use all these little leftover bits and bobs for my wreath. And again, I'm always working in the same direction. You're just shoving those into the wire. It does a couple of things. It prevents you from having to rewire all these things in, but it also tightens up the existing wire that you've got to shove in a few extras. I love how soft this one is. White pine is really sticky to work with. The sap is something else, and it's the one that'll mark your clothing and mark your hands, but the smell is fabulous, so it's worthwhile. So the other green, I think that a lot of people have in their yard, and is boxwood. And what I love about boxwood is that it's a break from the texture of all of these needles. So everything we've used is evergreens with needles. It's lovely to have something with some leaf in it. So again, all you're going to do is take those pieces of boxwood, any holes you've got, any spaces that you think, and it takes 5 or 6 full pieces of it. So, if you go out, boxwoods aren't generally humongous. You know, don't be too worried about sacrificing a little bit, just a few little pieces where you can add in, and it's just a different texture to your wreath. So I'm going to add some of those in. And again, I sort of look to see if there's any holes or any place where I need to kind of beef it up. So that gives you a little more texture to have a little bit of leaf in there. If you want to go real fancy, and there are lots of people who go fancy, and I love this material, it's magnolia, and it's regularly available now. We are very fortunate. We've got a couple of really nice places close, Walter's Garden Center and Nichols Garden Center, you know, who carry this sort of fancy schmancy stuff. Most florists have it as well. And you don't need a whole lot. What I generally do is buy the large pieces. And again, I use these in my planters. And then any of the little bottom leaves, or even sometimes the tips that are really, really tiny, and those can go in just the same. And again, it's sort of, you don't have to use it, but I love how it customizes it. I love to sort of showcase that brown on there. I think it's a really beautiful addition. You can always just use a little bit just in the top, maybe where you're going to put your ribbon. In that case, I'm going to just go this way. Okay. Now, David mentioned in his little warm up for us, holly. So again, a beautiful, beautiful green that you can purchase, or maybe you're lucky enough to have a holly shrub in your yard. Some years you've got great berries, some you don't. Again, this year has been just a fabulous year for supplies and materials in the garden. And it seems like the cones are plentiful and the berries are plentiful. And so holly is a beautiful berry to add. They are very prickly to work with, but it's worth the pain. Okay, so we'll just tuck in a little bit of that. You can see just that little bit of color. And again, it doesn't take a whole lot. And again, I always work in the same direction. Just tucking a few of those in. Just to give a little more color. Oh, I've missed the wire. You know you're starting to be almost complete when you can't jam anything else into your wire. That's your signal that you're just about done. Yeah, and I'm almost there because they are tricky to get in. Another berry that you could use, berries are tricky, again, because you're closing and opening your front door. And there's nothing worse than a squashed berry on your front hall carpet. But there are berries. Holly berries, I feel like, are a really good one because they sort of dry out a little bit and they stay on the wreath really, really nicely. The other berry that I use, and again, this is one that you could forage from your garden, no problem at all, is rose hips. So again, a real prickly one to work with, but absolutely spectacular. Tiny little berries, a really nice show. And what I like about them is they are sort of a dry berry. So if they drop and you step on them, there's no juice getting all over and staining things. Yeah, so here we are. I'm starting to add in those few things and it's starting to look really full and beautiful. The only other green that I think I want to mention to you guys, and again, this is one that you probably can't forage, but you'll see often at the garden center or florist, and that's BC cedar. And it has that same beautiful smell as the Ontario cedar, but you can see that it's sort of a different shape. I love the fall of it. I think it's got a beautiful, natural, very gentle gracefulness about it. And so that's another one. My wreath's getting kind of full, so I'm probably going to leave it where it is. But that's another one that I often add into roping or into my urns or into my wreaths. Again, got great fragrance. So real pretty one. So the other things that you can add, I think that ribbon generally just really kind of completes the look. And if you go into stores right now, Michael's, you can buy hundreds different kinds of ribbon. So this is a really great way to easily customize the wreath to, again, the person you're giving it to or for yourself. And, you know, 9 out of 10 years, I always go with plaid and I try to break that. But I end up always going back to it. Maybe my Scottish heritage, I don't know. But basically what you're going to do is, bow making is another whole half-hour segment. But if you can keep bows from year to year, or you can buy pre-made bows, or even if you want to make friends, you know, with somebody who can make a bow and take your ribbon to them. I end up getting all sorts of people dropping by with Christmas greetings and a spool of ribbon for me to help them make bows, which I'm only too happy to do. Now, I'm saying that, I know there's 50 of you out there, and I'm not going to give any of my address. But basically, you can buy these pre-made bows. Most garden centers and florists have them pre-made on a wire like this. And basically, all you're going to do is wire that to your wreath frame. And again, just tie that off at the back. Instantly, it starts to look like holiday, but I want to alert you to some options. You can go pretty traditional, go at the front, or you could have that at the bottom, or you could do a smaller bow and kind of do it at a jaunty angle. The sky's the limit, what you like. And so I want to really inspire you to get creative and to try something different each year. Or if you're going to give 3 or 4 different wreaths, to try something different on each one. It's so much fun to switch up the styles. You can go really formal, or you can go really natural. I made a wreath for a friend who doesn't like ribbon. She doesn't like the glitz and glamour. Instead of a bow, we put a tiny bird's nest wired onto the bottom, and we used things like milkweed pods, and you know, we stayed in those browns, and it was such a unique and beautiful wreath that really spoke to who she was. Yeah, so again, the sky's the limit as far as creativity. The other things that I got here to talk about that you can add in, again, lots of people like to add everything but the kitchen sink. If you go out to the garden at this time of the year and you've got ferns, the ferns, of course, have died down, but you're left with these beautiful little seed pods up in the middle. And some of them, they're all different shapes. They're usually a dark brown. And these are absolutely beautiful. Added in. Again, you just slide those into your wire, just like you have. I've also seen people bundle them and put them across the wreath. So that's another, you know, another idea for you. You can do that with dogwood sticks or something like that. But the fern fronds are one that you can't really buy these anywhere, but easily foraged if you go for a walk. If you go along the rail trail, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. So you can just cut half a dozen, and yeah, so it's something unique. Orange slices if you've got a dehydrator. And again, I'm all about adding different colors. These are simple as running a wire through that rind and adding those in. And I love the look of having a little bit of orange, just a little bit of color in there. It can be very, very pretty. Cinnamon sticks, again, to add to the smell factor when it's on your front door, to have all those fresh greens. You can tie like a pretty little ribbon around them. And again, you just wire them on at this point. So pretty simple to add. Interesting things like that. Again, you can just get those at the grocery store. I've seen that at the dollar store too, in the Christmas section. So it's, again, another idea that you can use to sort of complete and finish off your wreath in a unique way. The last thing, and I wanted to definitely demonstrate this one, is pine cones. Again, this is one, particularly if you've got grandkids or kids, to go for a walk. We used to give them each a bag and just let the kids go wild, and they would pick up all of the pine cones I'd need for the whole season. And so these are white pine cones, very, very sticky, but I love the shape of them. There's a variety of sizes and shapes. The little spruce cones are really cute and pretty, and I like to sort of bundle them up together. So you've got 3 or 4 and kind of tuck those in. Or if you like the short, fat little red pine or Austrian pine cones. Again, if you go out to the yard, it's amazing what you can find out there. And if you want something more colorful, you could always spray them. These ones I've left natural because honestly, the white pine, they get this little sap here. They almost look like they've been painted and frosted for you. So again, let Mother Nature do the work. And you're basically gonna use your paddle wire again, nice long piece. And you're simply gonna go around those bottom few scales. The paddle wire is great because it sort of disappears. So basically you're just catching the bottom of that pine cone and again, giving it a good twist. Okay, and then your wire sort of disappears. And then all you're gonna do is just find a spot for your pine cone. And you're basically wrapping that wire around the back. And again, on the back of your wreath, you're going to have little bits of wire and stuff, but you never ever see it from the front. And what I like about this method is that then your pine cone is really on wire. And so you can kind of move it around where you like. Yeah, and so I pre-wired a few of them. This is always sticky business. But again, just a natural way to add a little bit of color and some texture. Always think that the wreath is really pretty with just the greens, but when you add in all of these little extras, you know, that's your way to really set it apart. If you feel like, you know, cutting the greens and making that wreath base is beyond you or you're short on time, I see all sorts of places where they're selling just the green frame, and then you could customize it. You could go for a walk, you know, and add all of these little assortment of things to sort of customize it to how you like it. There are lots of design guidance basically saying, you know, to work in 3s or 5s because that's a nice, you know, a nice number to sort of see on a wreath. But again, I want to encourage you to break the rules. If you feel like it needs 4 or 6, don't be worried. Throw the rules out the window and do something that you absolutely love. Yeah, and so that's what I would call finished. And it's really, I've tried to keep it in the half hour here to allow us for lots of time. Yeah, and so we're going to open it up to questions, but I always feel good about having something like this, or like I say, offering it as a gift. It's maybe not factory perfect, but a lot of love and a lot of time goes into it. And I think, you know, that's the important thing. As far as where to store your wreaths, they are for outdoor. So on the front door or on the gate. Indoors, they would last probably under a week. And so if you want your wreath over the fireplace or something like that, I would wait until just a couple of days before Christmas. It is fresh greenery and it will start to brown if it's too warm. Particularly, lots of people like to hang them over the fireplace and, you know, where it's really, really warm. But they would do best, like I say, on the outside of the front door, or even between the front door and the screen door, or on a gate or on a fence somewhere at the front entrance. Yeah, so anyway, thank you so much.